Let's see, share screen. Voila, make sure my we're just going to wait a couple more minutes to make sure everybody gets signed in. Hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you for the reminder. I will try my best. Please don't hesitate to send me a reminder once I'm talking. Hi, Lynn. Hope you're well. Yes, I'm so excited to be in Paris. It's great. Oops, sorry. So we'll just wait 2 more minutes and then we will get started. Just give everybody some time to sign on. Yep, just about 1 more minute and then we will get started. And yes, please, if I start talking super fast, just send me a message, slow down. So it's just about 8 o'clock now, so we will just get started and let others sign in as we go on. So let me just make sure this is not in my line of sight. Okay, so today's talk is going to focus on all things that have to do with motor skills and specifically how Soundsory can be a great tool for many of our kids, our adolescents, even our adults that are struggling with some kind of motor issue or delay or just for overall well-being. Sorry. So who I am, so my name is Cara Tavollaci. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. I'm originally from New York, and I'm currently living in France. I work with children of all ages with various diagnoses, and I work with kids with, sensory processing and many children that have some motor difficulty, whether that's a gross motor problem, praxis, motor coordination, fine motor, visual motor, bilateral coordination, etc. And what's happening now is that we're all kind of living in this new reality. Screens are becoming more of a priority than they were before confinement. And this current situation, I know parents and families were trying to limit the amount of time that their children spent on videos and TVs and computers and phones and things like that. And now it's really become a necessity in our daily lives. All of us are getting more screen time than before. Our kids are being educated on a screen, whether it's through a Zoom classroom or Google Classroom or a pre-recorded activity that they're watching. Adults are working on the computer much more often now, doing teletherapy if you're a therapist, socializing on a screen, talking with members that are far away. So it's the world now is much more screen-based. And what happens as a result of this is that, we're just more sedentary. That's just a reality. We might not be as sedentary as this couch potato here, but all those natural ways that we have to move, kids moving between the school classrooms, going from the homeroom classroom to the lunchroom, to the playground, to the music classroom, to the art classroom, those opportunities aren't as prevalent right now. Even adults, going to work, moving between offices, between meeting rooms, much more of our time is spent sitting down, learning or working on a computer. And we all know that being less active is not good. It can lead to weight gain. It can affect our mood. Think about the last time you binge watched on Netflix. You probably sat on the couch, probably ate some snacks, maybe didn't make the best snack choices. And afterwards, you're probably a bit tired and fatigued because moving or lack of moving affects our energy levels. It affects our attention, focus, and concentration. And it's so important to move on a daily basis. And as therapists, as adults, we know that it's important. And even more so today when all these opportunities are not as available as they previously were. We read studies that show that kids who are more active are better focused, they're better attentive, their processing skills are faster, they have better memory skills. Sorry, let me just move this for 1 second. And what do many teachers do in their classroom is they provide movement breaks, and they do this because they want to help their kids refocus, help reorganize their students. Think about the last time you were in an all-day training course. That first morning coffee break after an hour and a half, 2 hours of listening is very welcomed. And once you move, you grab some coffee, you become a little bit energized, you have a little bit better focus for the second half of that morning. Sorry, just technical difficulties. And we know that keeping the body promotes, mental clarity. It is vital both, for learning and physical health. And we know that the body contributes so much more to our daily lives than just, physical attributes like strength and endurance. It plays a big role in our emotions, our learning, our thinking. Think about that runner's high you get from an intense run or a workout. You're energized, you're like ready to go, you're super awake. And we know that with our clients, they all need to move. It's healthy for everybody, and especially those clients that do struggle with motor skills. It's important for them to move and to practice moving and to work on those types of skills. And ultimately, when we're working with clients, we're working with families, their ultimate goal is this top of the learning pyramid here. They want academic learning, they want daily living activities, and they want, good appropriate behavior skills in their kids. And in order to do that, you have to kind of work at the foundational level, and that's this bottom of the pyramid. So let's take a quick look at kind of what motor skills look like. So when I was looking up specific motor diagnoses, they're very broad and they cover a lot of different areas. We have in the US, I'm taking this information from the US, specific developmental disorder of motor function is the clinical diagnoses, and that includes, dyspraxia, clumsiness, coordination disorder, gross motor delays, fine motor delays. It's just such a broad label. There's another diagnosis, other lack of coordination, unspecified lack of coordination. So everything is geared around motor and coordination and movement and how they are struggling. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at kind of, which will be a review for some of you therapists out there, but what those skills are like. So we know gross motor skills require the whole body. Whole body movements, the core muscles, eye-hand coordination. They include things like standing, walking, sitting, jumping, climbing on a playground, skipping, hopping, ball skills, swimming, scooter riding. The list can go on and on. And this is what kids do. This is what some adults do as well. And all of our kids can have a problem or difficulty in any of these areas. Then we can move on to fine motor skills. So what do those look like? You have your academic skills. For the young kids, it's, scribbling, coloring, those pre-writing skills. Then as they get older, it's drawing, scissor skill, writing, You know, kids use fine motor skills with play, constructing Legos, puzzles, dressing and manipulating dolls, for self-care, you know, zippering, buttoning, tying, unfastening, opening and closing lunch boxes, computer skills, typing, and now more often than not, we're using, you know, computers, a mouse, typing, the iPad manipulation, and we know these skills and we use them on a daily basis. And we can see clients that have difficulties in any one of these areas. You know, visual motor skills, eye-hand, eye-foot coordination, coloring, drawing, writing would be in this category, lining up your math problems on a page. I'm sure I've missed some, but this kind of gives you an over idea of just how many, you know, motor skills are involved in just daily life. You know, we have oral motor skills, ocular motor skills, how we use our eyes together. There's just so much motor that's involved on a day-to-day basis. And as therapists, we can see clients with any difficulty in any one of those areas: gross motor, fine motor, visual motor, and they can be struggling with that. And our goal is to really to make our clients as successful and independent in their daily lives and activities. And what happens is the client will come to you as a therapist as probably the first step and first tool in their search to remediate some of these difficulties. So they might go to a physical therapist who is probably going to work on exercises for strengthening and endurance and coordination. If maybe they notice some fine motor difficulties, maybe they'll refer to an occupational therapist who will work on, you know, sensory processing, sensory motor skills, also balance and posture and things like that. Maybe the OT might refer to a speech language therapist to work on maybe some oral motor skills and things like that. These therapists also may use adaptive equipment for these clients, pencil grips, slant boards, maybe a training wheels on a bike until they get better balance, dressing tools. Maybe they recommend some specific, you know, exercises or home programming that the individual can practice and repeat at home. In addition to all these tools and all these therapies that are out there, Soundsory is really a great tool that really targets the motor system, and more clinically known as the vestibular system. It's really a great foundational tool, and we're going to talk a little bit about the ear because it is an auditory and motor program. So let's just take a minute here to kind of review the ear. So the vestibular motor system is located in the inner ear, and we, as you can see here, have three parts of the ear. We have the outer, the middle, and the inner. And the Soundsory program works the whole ear. You can see that these three parts are all interconnected and connected. So when you're doing the Soundsory program, as I said, you're working the whole auditory system. It's getting a workout from the gating system that creates a gymnastic of those middle ear muscles to the bone conduction that goes directly to the inner ear, that vestibule, plus the rhythmicity of the music itself targets the vestibule as well. The classical pieces target the cochlea. So this whole program was created to really have this huge impact on the motor part of the ear. But as you can see, the ear is interconnected. So there's oftentimes therapists and clients have reported that they will see changes in language in the children that they're working with. And the exercise program that goes along with Soundsory is really designed to help develop and improve and practice those motor skills. So as most of you know, sorry, just give me 1 second. So for those of you that are therapists and work closely with clients that have motor problems or things like that, you probably have an understanding of the functions of this vestibular system. You know, it's everything that relates to our body movements, to our muscle tone. It's how we can stand up against gravity, you know, knowing where we are in space, knowing if we're moving and how we're moving. It's involved in how our eyes move, you know, how we are able to maintain, how we're able to move our head, but maintain a stable visual field. How we're able to find our way in space to navigate our environments. You know, the system is so important as we developed. You know, it's how we start to learn to roll over, to sit up, to crawl, to move to standing, how we then develop using both sides of our body together at first, and then having one side do one thing and the other side do something else, such as writing. You know, one hand stabilizes the paper while the other one is writing or copying the work from the board. It gives us energy after a walk. once you move and are a little bit active, you feel a little bit more alert, more energized. So there's so many things that, that are involved with this vestibular system, and this vestibular system is always working every day. And when it's working, you rarely think about it. So now let's get into a little bit about exactly what Soundsory is, how you can use this tool with your clients, whether it's in clinic, if you do home therapy, between sessions. We'll talk also a little bit about maybe some tricks and tips to kind of get you started if you haven't already started working with the program. So as I mentioned just a little bit earlier, Soundsory it's an auditory and movement program that works on motor skills through the use of sound and exercises. And it's really a foundational program. And the program consists of about 40 days of listening, and each day has about less than 30 minutes. And each day has an exercise program that can be followed along with it, or you can introduce your own exercises. So if you have certain goals that you're working on with a client, you can use those exercises and activities during their listening session. It's a great tool in that it's flexible like that, so you can modify and adjust to meet the needs of your clients. I've worked with some kids that just didn't have the level of imitation and copying skills necessary to complete some of the exercises, so we didn't do the exercise. We did more play-based types of therapy, and we'll get into that in a moment. Now, what exactly is in the headsets? So everything is programmed into your Soundsory headsets. You don't need a wire or anything except when you're charging. Each day you have 9 tracks of music per day, with an additional 10th track that is paired with the exercises, and I'll explain that in just a moment. And the music consists of Bach, Haydn, Strauss, some classical. We have marches, we have children's songs, gospel, jazz, and Latin music. And each song is about 2 to 3 minutes long, long enough for the brain to get used to the rhythm, but short enough to avoid habituating to it, habitual processing. And each day is organized so that specific tempos change several times in order to really change the brain. And what this kind of looks like, just to kind of help clarify. So when you turn on your headset, you'll see the 40 days are preloaded into the headset. And what you'll see is tracks that have a 0.1 after it and tracks that have a 0.2. So anytime you see a 0.1 after it, that's kind of like the meat of the program. So that's every day that has the 9 tracks of music. And then that 0.2 is 1 track of music that is just 3 minutes long that you pair with an exercise program. So how are they listening? So when your client is following the program, they are always, and just before I get into this, I see some questions are coming up, and since I'm just working the technology piece by myself, I'm going to answer all the questions at the end. So if you have questions, keep them coming. This is great. So when your client is following the program, they're always listening to the music through both bone conduction and air conduction. When the headsets are off, you can actually, not when they're off, but when they're in Bluetooth mode, the bone conduction piece is turned off. So they can be paired and used as a regular set of headphones, which is kind of nice if you have more than one kid in the family. One kid can do the program, one kid could use the headsets and listen to their own either schoolwork or music. But why do we want both of these types of listening, air conduction and bone conduction? Most headsets just contain air conduction. That is and Soundsory is a tool that is designed to re-educate the ear and the motor system. So by using bone conduction, sounds transmitted through vibration, which are faster than air conduction, we can really go directly to the vestibular part of the ear, the part that is focused on all those things related to motor. And bone conduction, in conjunction with the gating system, really works that whole vestibular system, the whole vestibule. And we'll talk about that now. So the gating system is really how we work this auditory motor system too. So what happens is that when you listen to any of the tracks of music, the Strauss, the marches, the jazz, kids songs, you will hear this perceptual contrast where the music gets brighter, crisper and clearer, and then when it's less so. And this is different than when you listen to music on a regular set of headphones. The music basically stays the same. Yes, the rhythms, the beats, and the tempo may change, but there are not these changes in intensity, which is what's different with this gating system. And this perceptual contrast does a few things. It surprises the brain. When you surprise the brain, you make it more attentive to what is happening. In order to make change in the brain, we don't want the brain to tune out the music. We want it to start to anticipate and predict what is happening and then pay attention to it. And the gating also creates an agitation of the liquids, in the whole ear, the cochlea and the vestibule. So this agitation then makes the auditory muscles, those muscles in the middle ear, work more efficiently, specifically the stapedius, which is at the level of the vestibule, so that it can better cope with and manage this auditory stimulation. So the stapedius regulates these liquids, and as a consequence, you improve the vestibule, the motor skills, those gross motor skills, the body schema, spatial navigation, visual motor abilities. This program and how it was designed is, in a sense, a foundational program, a general conditioning of the motor system. So with this program, what changes can we expect to see in our clients, whether they're a child or an adult? And we'll talk about that. So of course, this program is a foundational program that targets the functioning of the vestibular system. So it's not designed to replace therapy. It only enhances and improves therapeutic outcomes. So what I mean by that is that, let's say you have a child that is learning to ride a bike. Just because they put Soundsory on does not mean they're then going to ride a bike without that therapeutic practice and working of the activity. However, if they did have fear of movement, or didn't know where their body was in space, or had poor posture, those types of things will improve through the program, so that they're then more available to participate in the bike riding and practicing. I can give you an example of a young boy that I worked with. He was 5 years old, language delayed on the autism spectrum. He had those low muscle tone, poor posture, poor endurance, would W sit. He would come into the sessions and, maybe engage with an activity 1 or 2 times. It was really like doing cartwheels to get him to stick with an activity. He started doing the program, and the change in him was amazing. It was like not that he wasn't awake, but it was like he woke up. He was coming in, he was staying with activities for 6, 7, 8 times before he would move on to another activity. He was initiating interaction with me. He was, sitting up taller. He was just overall seemed stronger. And my goal, of course, I'm an occupational therapist, so my goal was all these motor skills. But what I also noticed as well was that he was repeating words quicker. His length of phrases was longer. He was using 2, 3, 4 word phrases. He didn't always need that prompt. He was every now and then having more spontaneous language. So the changes are, of course, different with every client, with every individual that goes through any program. They change and grow at their own pace. But these are some of the things that you can see following the use of this program. So that was a lot about the auditory piece of the program. So let's get into kind of the exercises, what they look like, how they were designed. There are a few things that went into creating these exercises. The first main thing is that we didn't want families and individuals to have to buy another piece of equipment, like a therapy board or an exercise ball or something like that. We wanted everything to be able to be done through the body. And we wanted to target on those foundational skills. So there are reflex integration exercises, jumping, proprioceptive heavy work, vestibular exercises, left, right. We have some fine motor coordination exercises as well. All the exercises are online, and we'll talk about how to find them in just a second. And why do we make this exercise portion part of the program? Because we know that learning starts with the body. And this is what most parents want. They want their kids to be able to learn in school, to navigate their classroom environment, to play in the playground, climb on equipment, to learn, attend, and basically, have their motor systems working so that they don't have to think about them, and so that they're more available and successful in the learning environment. So let's take a look at what a day 1 exercise would look like. I'm not going to go through it every day, but I'm kind of going to give you a beginning of the program, middle of the road, and then end of the program exercise. So a day 1 would look something like this. So we have body rubs, and that's where you're, my camera is in the worst place on this computer, but you're rubbing each limb. And this is a great exercise because you're also crossing the midline as you cover each limb. You're doing arms and legs. If your child can't imitate that, you can always have the parent massage the arms and legs to get them warmed up. We do sky earth stretches is the next exercise, where we're reaching up to the sky and touching down to the ground. If I do that, you probably won't see me anymore. We do front back jumping, some heavy work. If they can't jump independently, hold their hands and get them to jump a few times is also great. Then our open close is our reflex exercise. And these exercises will be repeated and mixed up throughout the program. So there is some practice and repetition that happens. This is a day 20 exercise. We have snow angels, where you lie on the ground, you're moving your arms and legs, you're getting this full tactile feedback. Back cross crawls, that's where they will lay on their back and they'll take a right arm or right elbow and touch their left knee and then switch. Then we have the supine flexion and prone extension positions. For kid-friendly people, we call it the meatball and the Superman. Then when we get to day 38, so we still want to keep the connection with the body. So we're doing body taps on each limb, both arms, both legs. Then we get a little bit more into the fine motor coordination. So we're doing jumping thumbs. We do itsy bitsy. That's a great finger coordination, if you know that one. Finger coordination exercise. And then we sledding, which is another reflex where you reach out. You're on all fours, you reach out on the ground, and then pull your legs in to meet your arms. And all these exercises are online. So once you or the client that you're working with purchases the headset, they'll get a login code where they can see the videos and see everything. And there's also a form that you can download, which shows you each day that you're on and what you've listened to and what exercises you've done. So let's talk a little bit. Hopefully you guys are all still with me, but I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way of getting kids to wear headphones and how to use the program and things like that. So of course, the first thing is whoever's using the program has got to wear the headset. So I've worked with a lot of kids on the spectrum, and sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge. So if your child is able to, using a visual schedule can help, or calendar where they put a sticker on every day or cross off the day when they're finished, using visual timers during the actual listening so that they know when it's starting and stopping. With kids on the spectrum that maybe are a little bit more hesitant, a little bit more fearful of wearing the headsets, we will use a lot of reinforcers or distractions, just picking all the favorite toys that are in the gym and just cycling them through. And this really will usually last just the first day or two until they get used to the routine, get used to the idea of the headsets. The little example I talked about earlier, what we used is he loved this little rabbit video. So we would turn the sound off, present the video with the headsets, and then he would watch the video while he had the headsets. Anytime he flipped the headsets, the video would go away. And we did this the first day, and each time he would stay with the headsets longer and longer. The second day was easier, and by the third day, we didn't even need the video camera, the video that he was watching. Some older kids, sometimes like just good old-fashioned bribe can work. Maybe you get an extra dessert after you finish 2 weeks, or maybe you get a special, toy or a Lego toy at the end of your listening. Whatever works for the family and for the client and what they think will motivate their child. Things that you shouldn't do while listening. And of course, there are some exceptions that I'll explain, but it's a music and movement program. So you don't want to have, TVs on or a noise in the background. You don't want anybody on their cell phones. You don't really want them using their computers. You don't want them continuously eating or chewing gum. Of course, there's exceptions. The example I just gave, I used a cell phone with a little video on it, but my goal was not to allow him to just keep watching the video. I eventually wanted him to be interacting and playing and moving, but that was what we knew was a great motivator for him and what we used for the first day or two, and then he was off and running. So there's so many things that you can do. You can follow the online exercises, you can, do yoga, you can dance, you can play, crawl. Oftentimes once kids put on the headset, they want to move right away. You can take a walk outside, you can, color, draw, paint. If you have your own goals as a therapist that you're working on, you can introduce those as well. I use this as a warm-up. It's a nice, really intense warm-up at the beginning of our sessions to kind of get them more tuned into their body, more awake, more alert, and then introduce skill after that. And sometimes for kids, when they first start to do an auditory program, the music can be a little bit overwhelming. So sometimes they can, it's just enough for them to just listen, to just have the headsets on and listen. And that's also a really important thing that you'll want to do. Besides these tips of making sure that the headset is charged, you always want to check the volume before you put it on a child or any other individual. Every time you turn it on or off, the volume gets reset to 10 automatically. So I always will drop it down to 5. If I know I have a more sensitive client in front of me, I will maybe make it even a little bit lower, like 4. And you always want to make sure that the headphones are on correctly, because the program is delivered through bone conduction, and that's this little vibratory piece that sits under the band of the headset. That piece really has to be in contact with the skull, so you can't have any hat or any tissue underneath it. Sometimes kids can kind of complain that they feel like it's pushing into their head. So what you can do is just have them shift it back or forward, just to alleviate that spot for a little bit. Some of the more sensitive clients, if they're really complaining, they could take it off for a couple seconds just to give that, just to give their head a little bit of a relief. And again, it's super easy to use. I don't know if you guys have purchased the headset or not yet, but everything is included in the headset. Your on-off button, you can see on the picture there, your volume adjustment, and it also is a Bluetooth set of headsets. So you can hook it up to your phone, you can make phone calls, you can listen to your own music. If you have families with more than one kid, sometimes that's also a good motivator, and what can help get a sibling to wear the headset. You have a brother who maybe doesn't want to listen to the program, but will listen to his own music. So you put his own music, so he can model and demonstrate that the headsets are safe, that it's fun to use, and then you can put the program on for the child that you are working with. And so if you are working with families or sending the product home, or families are purchasing it directly, you just want to remind the parents that their responsibility is just, to keep track of the days of the program, periodically change the headset to start and stop if it's a young child, or a child that doesn't have the language skills to tell them when the music is finished. Usually what you'll see is the kids will then, once the music stops, start to flip the headphones and take them off. You always want to make sure that they check the volume, and just keep an eye on the child if they're not directly working or interacting or doing the exercise with them, just to make sure that the headsets stay on, that they don't sneak and take them off or anything like that. So this is a little bit about the product information. So the cost of the product is $299 US and it's 279 euros. The website is, if you haven't already been on it, I'm sure most of you have, but www.soundsory.com. There's tons of information on the website, and there's a 14-day money-back guarantee. Express shipping. You have lots of research. This product was developed out of the Tavollaci method. So there's lots of research that's online, and also there's lots of case studies that have been done by therapists that are currently using the product. We have a couple of research studies that are currently in the process and are not finished at the moment. So there's lots of stuff that can be checked out online. So now we're going to answer some questions, because I've seen a bunch of questions popping through, so I'll try to get to all of them. But this right here is just all our contact information. So Caroline, my colleague who works in Hong Kong, she will be sending you out a copy of the webinar and the presentation along with a discounted coupon as well. So let me see if I can scroll back a little bit to get to some of these questions. So just bear with me. I'll try to get to the top, I think. Okay. So there was one question was just cerebral palsy with a question mark. Absolutely. Children with or individuals with cerebral palsy have motor problems. It's not going to fix their cerebral palsy, but if it helps give them better posture, better stability, better, foundational skills, that would be a great population to use the tool with. The next question was, are these binaural music? How is this different from other programs like TLP, therapeutic listening, and Tavollaci? Okay, so let me answer the first part of this question. So this program was developed out of the Tavollaci method. So the Tavollaci method, you have much more parameters for programming your equipment. This Soundsory just has one program. It does have air conduction, bone conduction, delays, and gating. It's different than, I think, TLP, the listening program, and therapeutic listening. Therapeutic listening does not have bone conduction. I haven't looked lately, but I'm pretty sure they have not put bone conduction to their system. And this is monaural headphones, so you're getting the same exact message to both ears. So I hope that kind of answers that question. Sorry, I would like to answer. Sorry, it takes me a second to just read the question, and then so question about using this program with cerebral palsy and what changes have been seen. I haven't personally worked with kids with cerebral palsy, nor have I worked with individuals who have had a stroke. I did work with an adult. He was 31. He had a heart attack, so lost some oxygen and brain function, particularly in the cerebellum. So he had a lot of difficulties with motor movements. His motor movements were very uncoordinated. They were very jerky. And following the program, for example, if he did like a jumping jacks, it was very like 1, 2, and then he would kind of stop, and then he would go again, but he couldn't sustain that consistent rhythm. And following the program, he was holding that rhythm, 8, 9 times before he would lose the rhythmicity of the exercise. So he really made nice changes with that. I think you're gonna, in each of these situations, adult with a stroke, adult with cerebral palsy, you're gonna look at, what the goals are of the client, look at all those motor skills and see, how you can introduce this to help those types of difficulties. How many times would a child listen to the 40 sessions? Is there any individuation possible with the songs? So usually how I work is I will have whoever's doing the program do a first 40-day intensive, and that can include breaks in between. I had one little girl who had Rett syndrome who did 14 days, then kind of took the weekend off, and then she carried on for another 2 weeks, and then maybe she took a couple days off. So usually if they can, we'll do like one 40-day session, and then it depends on really how the child progressed or the client progressed and what your continued goals are. So I have an older boy, he's 18, he has Down syndrome. So what we did was he did 2 40-day programs with about a month in between. And then now we're using it kind of as a maintenance to keep his auditory and motor system working, because he does have some significant delays. So he will do about 2 weeks on, and then I'll take about 3 weeks off, so that we're just kind of keeping that tuned in, the auditory motor system tuned and primed and working. There's a question, it sounds like the same results from the Tavollaci method. Is there a chance clients will want to replace the Tavollaci method? No, I don't believe so. I really think that this is a separate program. It's often a nice introductory to Tavollaci, because Tavollaci listening sessions can be longer. And I think the limitation of Soundsory is that you can't program it. It's just one program, whereas Tavollaci method, you really can individualize that and work with a variety of different clients. And sometimes, your clients might not be able to get to the center. So this is a great way to kind of introduce them to that and allow them to have something to work on those auditory motor skills that they're looking for, if they're looking for that. I would like to know if there has been any success in foreign language learning when using Soundsory. Not that I'm aware of, because really this Soundsory program is really designed for that motor piece, for the vestibular system. So it's not a language program per se, although there has been, or I have seen at least, changes in language, especially for kids that are language delayed, but it hasn't been used specifically as a foreign language learning program. I think a great tool to use for foreign language learning, if you're familiar with some of the other products that Sound for Life has, is ForBrain. That's this audio vocal tool, which is like this. So you're listening to your voice through bone conduction. So that could be a nice tool to use with foreign language. And let me just scroll down. Can you use this with kids who are hearing impaired? It would depend on the level of hearing loss that they have. You might have to up the volume. And if they have cochlear implants or not, you want to make sure about that. How important is it to do the 40 days consecutively? My daughter is on day 12, but won't be able to do it for the next week. Can we continue on day 13 in a week's time? Yes, I have. There's no trouble to take a break. Sometimes kids need a break during the listening, so that's totally an option. And sometimes the reality of it is schedules are busy, schedules change, things pop up. So yes, I would definitely continue right where you left off after that week break. Sorry, oops. I know with, sorry, I'm reading the questions. I'll just read them out loud. I know with ILS that you're not engaged in any new learning while listening. Is that the same with Soundsory? Yeah, if you haven't already listened to the program is really, dynamic, and it's really rhythmical, and it's really designed to get you to move. So I don't think it would be that easy to try and learn a new thing at that time. For example, giving all your attention trying to learn like a chemistry problem or something new that hasn't been introduced before. I think your attention it would be difficult for you to keep your attention on the new thing that you're trying to learn. And you may, in a sense, tune out the auditory piece of the program. Any contraindications in use with any conditions like epilepsy? For me, I always err on the side of caution. So if I have a client that has epilepsy, I'm going to make sure that they check with their doctor first, make sure that the doctor knows that they're undergoing a new program. And I might not have them listen for the full 25, 30 minutes for the first few days. I might have them just listen, for maybe 5 minutes and just kind of see how their system responds to it. I always just err on the side of caution. I'd rather be, safe than sorry. And then maybe after they do a couple of days at this 5 minutes, maybe I do 10 minutes and see how they respond. So yes, you can use it with clients like that. And somebody just clarified therapeutic listening has added bone conduction. Great. I don't know if there's any other questions. I think I caught all of them, hopefully. If you have any more that you think of. And you can always email us if you think, yes, there should be a discount coming. Caroline will send that out to everybody on Monday. You're welcome, Lynn. I hope you enjoyed it. That is an excellent question. What would families typically do after they no longer use the systems? Well, it's a very nice set of headsets that work with Bluetooth, so they can keep it just as their listening headphones. So if you're taking a flight and your child's listening to their iPad or watching a movie, they can pair it up with the headset so you can still use them. And maybe not use the therapy part of the program. But oftentimes too, families, maybe they use it in the beginning for a long time, and then they take a break, and maybe they think, down the road, or if their child has like a growth spurt, is looking a little uncoordinated, that they might reintroduce it again. Any other questions? Oh, you're welcome, Debbie. Good luck. And if you have any questions, of course, or therapy questions, we're available and happy to help. And it's really a great program. And, you know, just depending on what type of population you guys are working with. And this is probably going to answer this question right now. Is it important to do the exercises directly after the listening? We set the exercises to be done at you're still listening, but it's at the end of the listening session. But what I find is when I'm working with kids, they want to move right away. So I'm not waiting till the end of the session. The older young man that I talked about that had the heart attack, we did the exercises during the actual listening part. We didn't wait for that last piece. And I also have worked with kids who couldn't do the exercises. And that's, I think, is a really important thing. You know, just because your client can't do the exercises doesn't mean they're not going to benefit from the program. They're still going to benefit, and you can modify the exercises for each client. So, you know, if your client can't jump, you're going to do different ways to facilitate those types of things. This webinar will be available to listen to again. There's a recording of it, and that Caroline will share all that information with you. Yes, there was a comment that said the family can use it with the elderly grandparents, help them with balance. Absolutely. I think the senior population is a great clientele. I work with kids, so that's all my examples, but I think seniors would be a great clientele to work with, you know, because as you age, your vestibular system and your motor movements start to deteriorate. You know, you're less flexible, you're less, you know, you lose balance a little bit, you know, they're more prone to fall. So this could be a great tool to help with that. Yes, there would be no problem. So the question was, you can have a break after listening and do the exercise part later in the day. Yep. So if you remember back, so you'll have, let's say like day one, was going to say day 1.1. So that's, you know, 25 minutes of listening. And then after that 25 minutes, the program will stop, and then you can move to the next track, which will be 1.2, which has that one track of music that will be paired with the exercises. So you can wait if you want to take a break, you know, maybe the kid wants to have some lunch or a snack and then do the exercise later on. That would be no problem at all as well. So you really can, you know, be flexible with the program. You can really use it to meet the needs of your clientele. I think with any therapy, any intervention, you know, obviously the more you do it, the better the results are going to be. You know, if you think about exercising once per week versus, you know, 3 times per week. And our email information is here. So if you think of questions later on that you didn't think of during the talk. Oh, this is great. There's, I think everybody's seeing the comments and the questions, but a therapist has been using Soundsory with both kids and older folks and has been having really positive results with old people. With both, I think, but with old people too. They have better balance and they seem to love the music, which is awesome. That's so great. So wait a couple more minutes if any last minute questions. Not sure what time zone everybody's calling from. So if that's it, I think we'll end for here. So again, Caroline, my colleague out of Hong Kong, will send you all the information, the PowerPoint, the recording of the webinar tonight, the coupon, the discount code. And if, again, of course, if you have any questions or anything that you think of later on, or as you start to work with Soundsory or have any therapy questions, you know, we're always available to use it. There's one question, please speak about using Soundsory with Tavollaci. So I would not recommend doing Soundsory in between Tavollaci sessions. So typically a first loop of Tavollaci could be 14 days, and then you have a month break, and then you have a second round of listening. I would wait till they've completed their first Tavollaci program, because you also really want to see the results of that. You want to see what and how the child changes from the Tavollaci program itself. And you can use it afterwards as a maintenance program. I worked with a young boy that, did Tavollaci. He did 2 rounds of Tavollaci, and then just for financial reasons couldn't get back into the center. But he still needed a lot of work on his, his motor skills. He was very much significantly delayed. So they were able to purchase the Soundsory and able to use it afterwards as a kind of a maintenance tool. I think it's really important in Tavollaci sessions to really allow for that break and integration of the program. So I hope that helped clarify. Or you can also use it as like a introductory, if you have a client that maybe is considering trying the Tavollaci method or is thinking about the Tavollaci method, that could be a first program where you're just introducing them to the auditory world in a sense. So I don't see too many more questions popping through. So thank you all for taking the time to sit and listen. I hope this information was helpful, gave you some tips, gave you some better understanding of kind of how the program works. And again, always feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or any technical questions, therapeutic questions. We're really always happy to help. So if that's all, I will say goodbye. Bye, Lynn. And stay safe, everybody. And I hope everybody's healthy. And that's all for this evening. Okay, take care. Thank you for joining us.